You can't video me, I'm videoing you.
I can't tell if it's recording or not.
Well, look at the screen. It's going.
Life's good. Wait, did you start it? Yes, today. Oh.
These three is hotter.
Get out of my shot. It's all about me.
All about you.
Yeah.
There's Fred doing nothing again.
All it takes is slip.
behind this post.
No, you can't because your belly sticks out.
I feel bad for the post.
Let me get it back in.
Now something else sticks out.
What does it mean to be your brother's keeper?
You know, the Bible tells us that the greatest commandment is to love the Lord God with all of our heart, soul, mind, with all of our total being. And the second is this, to love our neighbor as ourselves.
What is your favorite part of brother's keeper?
I think my favorite part is experiencing the youth coming together with their leadership team and just the community of faith and positive attitudes and care for doing a ministry in this community.
How has brother's keeper touched you?
You asked some really good questions. You know that?
Yeah.
That's a great question, Kerrigan. How has Brother's Keeper touched me? There's so much work that goes into Brother's Keeper, the logistical planning, working with community resources to identify homes that really qualify for our assistance, and being out in these homes and experiencing how people live and how broken they are. I think that's truly touched my heart, and you know, how we're able to give them back a work and share the gospel with them just brings so many blessings.
All right, here at NHCBC, we're just going to talk a little bit about what we liked and missed about Brother's Keeper. For me personally, I really missed the grit of the people who came in. We have fun, go out helping people around, no matter the circumstances. Operating power tools in the rain was a lot of fun.
I miss my friends that went there. That's just you got to see people that you can't, and the community that was there was just good, yeah.
I missed going out into Ripley and, or Jackson County, same thing, whatever, and just helping people and seeing the look on their face.
What I loved about BK was that everybody was one big family. Once you're a part of it, you can't leave.
And what I liked about it was that no matter where you came from, if you came that week, you were part of, as Cole said, we were part of this family. You go down, have fun, make jokes, have a blast.
Good evening. I'm Scott Weaver, and I'm the campus pastor with Active Christians Today at the University of Toledo. And we are right now sitting in the basement of our home at the University of Toledo, the ACT house. By the way, Active Christians Today, we go by the acronym ACT. So if you hear that, I'm not referring to an ACT test. I'm actually referring to our student ministry group that we operate here at the University of Toledo. And we are just off the campus. There's a path. You're going to see a little bit more about that when you see video of us clearing the path to the campus as part of BK at Home. I want to talk a little bit as we open about what it means to be a neighbor. You've been hearing all week about what it means to love your neighbor, and I'm going to repeat the passage that we talked about in Mark chapter 12, and it is verses 30 and 31. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all of your strength. And the second is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. When we first moved into the campus house, or we first came to be a part of Active Christians Today at the University of Toledo, we had a neighbor next door, and there was somewhat of an antagonistic relationship between the house here and our neighbor, and the students here and our neighbor. And I decided when we came that we were going to change that. We were going to be truly neighbors to our actual neighbor next to the campus house here. And when she would leave notes on the windows or notes about stuff that was left out or whatever, I told the students, you right away, as soon as you see that, you move quickly and take care of it. Be a real, true neighbor to her. And every time I saw her standing in the driveway, I'd wave, our family would wave, and over time, the antagonism began to wear away. And eventually, we began to talk to her and talk about what she needed from us as neighbors and what we could do for her as a neighbor. And finally, at one point, I said, you know what, here's my phone number, text me or call me if you ever need something, if you see something that you don't want going on, or if there's something taking place. And that led to a relationship between us as we communicated with her. And so we changed that relationship over time, and it was a great thing to see happen. It didn't happen quickly, it happened over a couple of years, but that's what can happen when we truly love our neighbors, and that was a real neighbor to us here at ACT. I'm so happy to be able to be a part of BK at Home. Obviously this year it's quite different, but I do want to give one quick memory of Brother's Keeper that has affected me here with ACT. One of the students who lives here in the campus house is Madison Keith, and a lot of you may know her. I met her when she was about 9 years old at Brother's Keeper in West Virginia. And she's from the Cleveland group that come to BK every year. And that was, you know, all those years ago. And then last year, her mother called and they said they needed a place for Madison to stay at the University of Toledo. Did I know of a place? And lo and behold, we had an opening here at our campus house. A relationship that started in West Virginia ended up having an effect on what we do here in the ministry at ACT. And it's so neat. Madison lives here. She's here on the weekends during the summer. She's been doing work around here, so big thanks to Madison. Appreciate it. But it is so neat that a relationship that began in West Virginia with somebody here in Ohio, somebody we didn't know, and ended up furthering that relationship in such a way that we are now really close with the Keith family, and it's just so exciting to see what God can do. I thank God for Brother's Keeper and all that it's meant to my family. It truly is what we've said is like Christmas every year for us to be able to participate in Brother's Keeper, and it is sad that we aren't being able to be there, because one of the great things about BK is being able to build those relationships and build those friendships, friendships that have lasted years. You've heard a little bit about that. You're going to hear more about it. But those relationships that have lasted for years, God does an amazing thing through Brother's Keeper, and I'm so glad that my family has been able to be a part, and that 2 of my kids have been able to be campers, and we got 2 more on the way this year because it was BK at Home. They were able to participate too. But I'm just excited to see what's been happening around the world as a result of BK at Home. Sometimes God uses something that we think is negative and turns it into a real positive, and that's what happened this year. So here we go. Welcome to Brother's Keeper 2020, BK at Home.
Attitude check!
Praise the Lord!
I guess the memory that sticks out in my mind is how differently we do it now in terms of meals and so forth. In the early days, we would pack up in the cooler, each cooler for each crew, white bread and bologna and cheese, basically, and whatever drinks we needed. You know, of course, the students, they weren't real gung-ho about that lunch, but it kept us on the job site, and it was kind of back in the good old days, so to speak.
Well, I think a lot of times when, especially youth, hear the word missionary, or mission trip. They think they're going to like a third world country or someplace like that. And I think that when they see that, you know, for us, it's 40 miles from our home, and they see people that don't even have, they think they don't have a lot, and then they see people that have worse. And I think they realize that you can be a missionary in your neighborhood. You can be a missionary right next door, and you can help people without going somewhere very far from home. And it just helps you to grow because you realize that you have something to offer someone else.
All right, yeah. So I got started with Brothers Keeper by my home church. Initially got in as a work crew through Emmanuel Baptist Church and just dove in head first. We started out as on a work crew, and then we got put on a worship team and just went from there, man. It just exploded. It was another place that I could call home. I think that I had been part of every Brothers Keeper but the first three. So it was pretty cool to see that from the fruition, right? From the beginning of when Brothers Keeper first kicked off until now. We started just by coming out from our church and just being part of something great that we didn't even know that was going to be great. You know, just trying to find a local mission trip that says, you know, we want to give back to the communities that we're in, that our students are in. And it just started from there. We always have a theme, right? But I think my overlying theme, although the Matthew verse was what Brothers Keeper was really based upon, Proverbs 27:17 always sticks in my head. As iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. And that's exactly what Brothers Keeper is about, like sharpening one another so that we can sharpen the communities that we're going back into. And it's awesome to get to experience some hands-on work that you may not have ever gotten to do before in life. So that's really cool. So then when you come back home and you're back into your home communities, you can take that knowledge of what you learned and what you gained, both spiritually and physically, right, into your own communities, into your own churches, into your own homes. And that is awesome.
Through you the blind will see, through you the mute will sing, through you the dead will rise, through you our hearts will praise, through you the darkness flees, through you my heart screams, I am free. Through you the blind will see, through you the mute will sing, through you the dead will rise, through you our hearts will praise, through you the darkness flees, through you my heart screams, I am free. Through you the blind will see, through you the mute will sing, through you the dead will rise, through you our hearts will praise, through you the darkness flees, through you my heart screams, I am free.
Hey, Roger.
Yeah.
What are you doing for Brother's Keeper? Nothing. It doesn't look like nothing. Looks pretty amazing.
I gotta go home and work on a ramp.
BK at home. Brother Roger.
Okay, we're gonna do it again. And Cole, I can't see your head.
Yeah, see, you push that because it says stop. Push it. No.
Oh, look, it's videoing right now.
Yeah.
Hey, Emily, what's Brother's Keeper mean to you?
It means helping people that need help and need things done for them that they can't really do themselves.
And so why are we working on our church instead of somebody's house?
Well, one, we can't go work in other houses, and two, our church needs some work. It's pretty old,
So we can serve others by, this is where we're having our services, is in the Paul Vincent Fellowship Center. And it was built in 1986. So it was long overdue. I mean, I think there have been a couple times when stuff has been done. But we are major. These kids are working major to make these tables clean and nice. And the Fellowship Center is going to be clean and ready for worship on Sunday, Bible study on Wednesday night. They've worked really, really hard. They're still working. Emily and Macy getting the power washing done. Getting all this old paint taken off our wheelchair ramp.
What are you doing up here?
Pulling weeds back.
For what reason?
Make the path visible.
What's going on here?
Oh, that was a hole. What?
What's going on here?
We're cleaning up all this mess. You know, what do you want me to call it?
The mess.
I don't know. It is a mess. Don't let it fall on your head, because a few of them almost fell on me.
Wet too.
No, I'm gonna go see if I can get a towel, because I'm lazy and I'm old.
Brothers Keeper 2020, celebrating your 20th year of ministry together. Fun fact, I was actually a student at the very first Brothers Keeper, so it is a privilege for me to be a part of this one. Now, obviously, this one is a bit different than previous ones. You know, in the past, we've always come together at Parchment Valley and ministered to the Jackson County community. But this year, due to the coronavirus, we're doing a special BK at home. And you have the opportunity to minister to your own community. I'm excited to see how God works through all of this. Now, our theme verse for the week, as you are well aware of by this point, is Mark 12:31, where Jesus instructs us to love our neighbor as ourselves. What I want to focus on today is the question of, who is our neighbor? In Luke's Gospel, chapter 10, Jesus is involved in a similar conversation as he is in Mark chapter 12. But in Luke 10, he is speaking to a lawyer who is trying to justify himself. When the lawyer asked Jesus in verse 29 the question of, who is my neighbor? Listen to how Jesus responds. He responds with a story. Luke chapter 10, starting in verse 30, says this. Jesus replied, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers, who stripped him and beat him. And then they departed, leaving him half dead. Verse 31. Now, by a chance, a priest was going down the road, and when he saw the man, he crossed the road and he passed by on the other side. So likewise, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, he also crossed the road and he also passed by on the other side. But lastly, a Samaritan, as he journeyed, he came to where this man was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. He went to the man and bound up his wounds, pouring oil and wine on them. And then he set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn. And he took care of him. And the next day the Samaritan took out 2 denarii and he gave them to the innkeeper, saying, take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back. Then Jesus asked the question, which of these 3 do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers? He said, the one who showed him mercy. And Jesus said to him, you go and do likewise. Now in this parable, we have 3 individuals who pass by. The priest, the Levite, and the Samaritan. And much can be said about these 3. You know, the first 2 were considered to be religious people. And then the Samaritan was the outcast. And Jesus says that the Samaritan is the one who got it right. He is the one who did the will of God. Now, that's the point of the parable. But I don't want to focus as much on these 3 individuals right now, as much as I want to focus on the man who was injured. He is the one who helps us understand who our neighbor is. Let me give you 3 characteristics of this man. First, he is someone who these men encountered. He's someone who these men encountered. How many people do you think you encounter in a given day? How many people do you see at your school or at the mall or just even in your neighborhood? Now, the first characteristic of a neighbor is someone that you encounter. I read one statistic that said, depending on your lifestyle and how much you travel, the average person encounters more than 3 million people in their lifetime. Some were even as high as 42 million people. But that is a lot of encounters. We encounter people every day. So that's the first characteristic of this man. He is someone that they encountered. The second characteristic is this. He is someone who had a need. He had been beaten up, robbed, and left alongside the road to die. He had a need for help. What caused the first two men to walk by? Maybe busyness. They had to get to work or to church on time. Carelessness. Maybe they just didn't care about the man who was hurting. Maybe there's a bit of judgment that was passed. They stereotyped the man, or maybe they racially profiled him. Now that's a relevant topic today. Regardless, the man had a need, and the first two ignored him. See, for Brothers Keeper, dozens of Jackson County residents submit applications every year for assistance. And one of the requirements is that they demonstrate considerable need. And oftentimes, handicap ramps are built, or shingles are hung, or painting jobs are completed for those who are not able to do it themselves. Jackson County emergency responders recently indicated that this ministry has saved them thousands of dollars. Who is it that you encounter that often demonstrates need? Maybe they don't need a porch or shingles hung or a room to be painted. But maybe they have other needs like the need for food or the need for shelter or maybe the need for a friend. When you spend enough time with someone, you'll discover that everyone has needs. So how is it that you can help? The Samaritan simply slowed down to check on the man, and he was able to rescue this man and give him hope. So that's the second characteristic of this man. He is someone who had a need. Let me give you just one last characteristic of this man to help us understand who our neighbor is. He is someone that you're able to help. He's someone that you're able to help. The Samaritan was able to relate to this man's suffering. As I mentioned before, the Samaritan was the one who was an outcast. He's someone who based off his race, knew what it was like to be neglected. He knew what it was like to be ignored. He knew what it was like for people to cross the other side of the street. God likely used that experience to help him demonstrate grace in this situation. See, all of us have felt the pain of loss before. All of us have felt what it's like to be left out. All of us understand the sorrow of being neglected or unwanted. True, some of us, some people experience more than others, but all of us, at least, have been in that situation before. Now, I have found, at least in my own life, that God often uses these situations to prepare to prepare me for something bigger. He often uses these circumstances to prepare us for our encounters with other neighbors. In the book of Jeremiah, the prophet is complaining to God about his own circumstances. He's complaining to God about his situation. And God responds in Jeremiah chapter 12, verse 5 by saying, look, if you have raced with men on foot and they have wearied you out, then how are you going to compete with horses? And if in the safe land you are so trusting, what will you do in the thicket of the Jordan? In other words, God is saying, look, if this has worn you out, how are you going to survive what I have in store for you next? You relish your role as a prophet, Jeremiah. How are you going to relate to people unless you first experience pain yourself? See, all of us experience pain in our lives. All of us experience sorrow. Now, that's just part of living in a fallen, broken world. But God does not leave us in sorrow. Rather, he allows us to experience it so that he can prepare us for something even greater. The Samaritan was able to use his own experience of brokenness to minister to a fellow outcast. It taught him how to be a neighbor. See, in college, I met a man named Warren who was very different than me. In many ways, he fit the description of the man that we just read about in the story. He was homeless. He was dirty. He frequently found himself in prison, and he was often drunk. See, like the religious men in this story, I am sure that I passed by him on numerous occasions. But one day, I decided to talk to him. He was out looking for food, and so I made him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Over the course of the next 2 years, I developed a really good relationship and friendship with Warren. Every night, he came to my apartment and would knock on my door. And I would often go and visit him down at his camp by the river. I even joined him on numerous occasions for dumpster diving. See, as a college student, you can actually find some really exciting things in dumpsters. But over time, he became more than a homeless person to me. He became a neighbor. He became my friend. As I got to know Warren a bit more, I learned that he lost contact with his family. Now in his 40s, he had been kicked out of his house at the age of 20, and he had not seen or heard from his parents in more than 2 decades. He said that he was close to his mom growing up, but he no longer had a relationship with her. He realized that his behavior and his addictions ruined that for him. Warren was extremely lonely. As I learned more about Warren, I also learned the names of his parents. I also learned that he grew up in Bartow, Florida. Well, being a computer science major, I've always been pretty good with computers, and so one particular morning I decided to sit down and try my Google skills, and I typed in the name of his parents and typed in Bartow, Florida, and sure enough, one contact pops up with an address and a phone number. So I decided to pick up my phone and give it a call. After a couple of rings, a lady picked up the phone and she said, "Hello." And I said, "Hello, is this Linda?" And she said, "Yes, it is. Who is this?" And I said, "Well, my name is Todd McClure, and I'm a student at Marshall University." And she said, "Okay, well, why are you calling me?" And so I said, "Well, I believe I found your son." And she said, "Well, how do you know it's my son?" I said, "Well, is your husband's name Frederick?" And she said, "Yes, it is." And I said, "Is his middle name Warren?" "Yes, it is." And I said, "Is this your address?" She said, "Yes, it is." "How do you know all this information about me?" I did not tell her that I also had a 3D image of her house pulled up on Google Maps. I figured that would kind of freak her out a little bit. But over the course of 2 to 3 minutes, we confirmed that I did indeed meet her son. And I had about a 15 to 20 minute conversation with her, and she gave me kind of the backstory of what had happened in Warren's life and how he ended up where he was. She had no idea that he was now in Huntington, West Virginia. And after about 15, 20 minutes of a conversation, she said to me in closing, before I hung up, she said, "Do you mind passing on a message for me?" I said, "Of course, I'll probably see him tomorrow. What message would you like me to pass on?" She said, "When you see him next, will you just tell him that I love him and that I forgive him?" I thought about that for a long time that night. And I thought to myself, how wicked would I have to be not to pass that message along? Here is this message of love and forgiveness from a parent to a wayward son who has gone astray, who is longing for affection and longing for a relationship with his parents. And the more I thought about that, the more I realized that doesn't that describe all of us? See, there are more than 7 billion people on this planet, and every single one of us have gone astray. Every single one of us have become wayward children. We've gone our own ways. Every single one of us have turned our backs on our Heavenly Father. Yet God loves us, and God pursues us. And as children of God, God also gives us this message of love and forgiveness to take to the world. And so, as we think about Brother's Keeper, BK 2020 is about loving your neighbor. And there are neighbors all around you who need to hear this message of love and this message of forgiveness. And so as you think about your neighbors today, who is it that you encounter on a daily basis? Get to know them. I guarantee that they have needs. And as you learn of those needs, think about the ways that you can serve them. Maybe it's putting your Google skills to work, like I did in college. And I'm sure that God has gifted you, or He will gift you, in a way that meets their deepest needs. The next day I did see Warren, and I passed on this message, and tears began to fill his eyes, tears began to fill my eyes, and finally I said to him, would you like just to give your mom a call and talk to her for yourself? He said, I can do that? And I said, you can. And so I gave him my cell phone, we dialed the number, and for the next hour, right out by the dumpster behind my apartment, I saw reconciliation take place. And again, the Bible tells us so frequently that we, as followers of Christ, have been given the message and the ministry of reconciliation. Again, who is your neighbor? Don't walk past them anymore. Don't cross over to the other side of the road. Instead, be a brother's keeper, loving your neighbor as yourself.
With